Good afternoon. My name is Margie McDonald, and I'm a member of the SCANS Public Presentations Committee, and I would like to welcome you to this presentation today. The title is The Acadians, Here and Now. As a very special welcome to our speaker, Jules, Chiasson, and to anyone who is new to SCANS. Could you please check that your phones are off? I checked the cameras off. How appropriate. Okay. It's a tradition in SCANS that we do a land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are in the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
It's my mic.
This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship. These treaties do not do not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty, but instead establish rules. Bill is trying to tell me something.
No, he's
okay. Sorry. Okay. The treaties of peace and friendship try to establish rules for ongoing relationships between nations. We recognize the significance of these treaties and the need for continual learning, engagement in the work of truth, reconciliation, and empathy. We are all treaty people. In SCANS, we also recognize that African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched this part of Mi'kmaq, known as Nova Scotia, for over 400 years. Before I introduce our speaker more formally, just a couple of logistic issues. First, the bathrooms are at the back, and the fire exit is at the front here. We're going to have a 10-minute break when you'll finish the talk, probably about 2:30-ish. And thank you very much for the hospitality of SCANS for your work. And thank you very much for your privilege. A little bit of SCANS. For those of you who aren't familiar with SCANS, we're an organization that exists here for lifelong learning. We provide affordable, non-credit courses for seniors, online or in person, or both. The best thing about SCANS is there aren't any tests or assignments. That's what I like the best. There's only presentations and discussion. That's a model of learning that I particularly enjoy. SCANS is a membership-based organization, and through your membership, you can attend any number of courses, provided there is space. There's a fall term, a winter term, and a spring term. Classes are once a week for a maximum of 6 weeks. We've got fabulous courses coming up this autumn, both online and in person. There really is something for everyone in this lineup. We've got courses on the course on the U.S. election. We've got one on the queer community in Nova Scotia. We've got one about Joseph Conrad. There's one about Palestine and Israel. There's a really interesting one on the relationship between the Inuit and Western cultures. There's another course on later life planning to help us with our planning for the future. There's one on genetics, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's a brochure at the back that you can pick up if you haven't seen it online. Our talk today is the Acadians Here and Now. I'm sure that the International Congress that was held here last summer has piqued your interest in the issues of the Acadians in our province. It certainly, I was amazed at all the community functions that were going on, and I really wanted to be Acadian. Our speaker today is Jules Chiasson, as I said before. He's the executive director of the Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse. He was born in Cheticamp, and he's got degrees from University of Moncton and also from Henson College. He worked for Radio Canada for 28 years as a radio producer and director in various parts of Canada before becoming the ED of several Francophone community organizations in Moncton and here. His contribution to the Society of Canada is just remarkable, and I would like to thank him for all the work that he has been doing and that he is doing now. So
hand the microphone over to Jules Chiasson for his talk, The Acadians Here and Now. Thank you, Jules.
Thank you, Margie, for the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for inviting me to the Seniors College Association of Nova Scotia. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about the Acadian community of Nova Scotia. I should mention from the start that I'm not an historian and I'm not a professor specializing in Acadian history. What I'll share with you today comes from my personal experience and the stories that have been passed down through my family, as well as what I've learned in school and university. And since French is my first language, I hope you won't mind my accent as I speak to you. Let's start off with a little bit of history. As many of you probably know, the Acadian people faced a tragic event in 1755 when they were expelled from their homeland, such as Grand Pré, Annapolis Valley, and Beaubassin. It's a heartbreaking chapter in the Acadian history. Over 15,000 Acadians were forced onto boats, with families being separated and sent off to American colonies, to England, France, and other distant lands. Sadly, more than half of those deported didn't survive the journey, succumbing to famine, disease, and shipwrecks. And those who did not board the boats were imprisoned on George Island. They were held in Halifax Harbor, waiting for more boats to take them away. Two of my ancestors were among those prisoners. Remarkably, they managed to escape by swimming to the Dartmouth coast and then made their way through the woods thanks to the help of the Mi'kmaq. From there, they traveled to what was known at the time l'Île Saint-Jean, today Prince Edward Island. Eventually, they crossed the Northumberland Strait and settled in Chiasson. They were part of the 14 founders of Chiasson in 1785. They are known as les 14 vieux, the 14 elders. My direct ancestor, Paul Chiasson, was one of those original settlers. They built their homes at that time deep in the woods at the base of the mountains to stay hidden from the British ships that passed through the area. It was many years later before the settlers of Chiasson felt safe enough to build their homes along the ocean coast. In fact, it took a while before the Acadian people began to publicly and proudly affirm their identity. It wasn't until a century later, in 1881, that they organized their first national convention in Memramcook, New Brunswick. About 5,000 people attended this convention. It was there that they chose Assumption Day, that's August 15, as the Acadian National Day. They wanted something that set them apart from the French Canadians in Quebec, who celebrate Saint Jean-Baptiste. That's June 24th. The Acadians were different. They had their own unique identity. In 1884, they had their second convention in Miscouche, PEI. Here, they chose the Acadian flag. It's the French flag with a star in the blue section, the star which is there to guide the Acadian people. They also selected Ave Maris Stella as their national anthem and adopted the motto, L'union fait la force, which means unity is strength. Once again, the Acadian people were proudly asserting their identity. 6 years later, in 1890, Université Sainte-Anne was founded in Pointe de l'Église, also known as Church Point, in the municipality of Clare, by the Catholic Youth Congregation of Jesus and Mary. In 1971, the university's management transitioned to a secular administration. Then, in 2003, Collège de l'Acadie, a community college offering professional and technical programs in Acadian regions of Nova Scotia, merged with Université Sainte-Anne, creating a single institution. Today, Université Sainte-Anne has 5 campuses, one in Tuscot, one here in Halifax, Pointe de l'Église, Saint-Joseph-du-Moine, and Petit-de-Gras. The Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse was founded in 1968 and was actually I was actually at the very first meeting. It took place at the Armdale Motel in Halifax, okay, which doesn't exist today. I was just 16 years old at the time, and I was elected to the board of directors as the youth representative. I remember it clearly. We were in the middle of the FLQ era back then. Because of the tense atmosphere at the time, we didn't make any public announcements about creating the Fédération Acadienne. The Anglophone community was pretty nervous about what was happening in Quebec, and we didn't want them to think we were somehow connected to the FLQ. Our funding came from what was then the Secretary of State, now known as Canadian Heritage. The mission of the Fédération Acadienne back then was the same as it is today, which is to promote the vitality and the overall development of the Acadian and Francophone community in Nova Scotia. In the early years of the Fédération Acadienne, our programs and activities were focused on 5 regions: Clare, Argyll, Richmond, Shettycam, and Halifax. As the youth representative on the board, I organized a youth conference at Université Sainte-Anne in the summer of 1969. That was during the height of the hippie movement. It was the era of the Woodstock Music Festival, Flower Power. and the peace generation. And we were all very much a part of that. I went to Université de Moncton in 1970 and got involved in several demonstrations. There was a lot of tension between the Francophone and Anglophone at the time. The mayor, Leonard Jones, was openly anti-French and against bilingualism. Moncton was about 2/3 Anglophone and 1/3 Francophone. So these issues were front and center. Our student demonstrations even caught the attention of the National Film Board producers, Michel Brault and Pierre Perrault, who came to Moncton and made the film L'Acadie, l'Acadie. The film made national news at the time. The student protests in Moncton also had an impact here in Nova Scotia. The provincial government was considering moving Université Sainte-Anne to Yarmouth, but the students weren't having it. They went on strike, making their voices heard loud and clear. Their determination paid off, and they convinced the newly elected Liberal government under Gerald Reagan to keep the university in Church Point. After I graduated from Université de Moncton, I returned to Nova Scotia and to work for the Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse as the cultural coordinator. Back then, there was no Acadian or Francophone schools. In fact, when I went to school, all the textbooks were in English, except for French class. We would speak French in all of our classes, but the books and the curriculum were entirely in English. I even remember our English teacher having to scold us to get us to speak English in their class. The FAN had been advocating for Acadian schools since it was founded in 1968. While I was working as the cultural coordinator in Cheticamp in the late 70s, I was elected to the Inverness School Board, representing the Cheticamp region. I made it a point in board meetings to push for the Cheticamp NDA school to be officially recognized as an Acadian school. Most of the board members who were Anglophones actually supported the idea. But the real challenge came from within the Cheticamp community itself. A lot of people were worried that if classes were taught in French, the students wouldn't learn English well enough to attend an English university or become fluent in speaking or writing English. It became a heated issue, with public meetings and even riots breaking out, both for and against the idea of an Acadian school. Some families are still divided over it to this day. In the end, the Legislative Assembly voted in favor of Acadian schools and French education for Acadian and Francophone students in 1981, just 1 year before the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms was adopted by the federal government. The Conseil scolaire acadien provincial, the CSAP, which is the Acadian and Francophone School Board, was established in 1996. Today, we have 23 schools across Nova Scotia. Here in Halifax, there are 7 schools, and another one currently being built at the corner of Bayers Road and Oxford Street. set to be open in 2026. Last year, the province finally adopted the Conseil scolaire acadien Provincial Act, 27 years after the CSAP was first established. The Act ensures that public funding supports French education programs and services, helping to guarantee the well-being and success of Acadian and Francophone students across Nova Scotia. In 2004, Nova Scotia hosted the third Congrès Mondial Acadien, World Acadian Congress. Acadians from all over the world, Louisiana, Maine, Massachusetts, France, Quebec, the Maritimes, and other parts of Canada came to Nova Scotia to celebrate the Acadian culture. One of the lasting legacies of that event was the adoption of the French Language Services Act by the government of Nova Scotia. Another one was the installation of road signs along the Nova Scotian main highways indicating the Acadian regions. 20 years later, that's this year, in 2024, the Congrès Mondial Acadien is back in Nova Scotia, this time in the Clare and Argyll regions. More than 30,000 people from all over the world came to the Congrès Mondial Acadien. Over 300 activities were part of the program. The economic benefit are more than $20 million. And one of the key legacies of this year's Congress is the modernization of the French Language Services Act. And another one is the repainting of the Acadian road signs. I've been involved with the Fédération Acadienne for quite some time, starting as a youth representative on the board back in the late 60s. Worked as a cultural coordinator at the end of the 70s. And after a long career with Radio-Canada CBC and involvement with several community organizations, here I am back in 2023 with the Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse as the executive director. Today, we have 12 Acadian regions in Nova Scotia, including Shedica, Sydney, Almadam, Pumket, Torbay, Truro, Chesapeake, Halifax, Vallée d'Annapolis, La Rive-Sud, Clare, and Argyll. The Fédération Acadienne now has 29 member organizations across Nova Scotia. We have 12 regional organizations for the 12 communities I've mentioned. We also have 15 provincial organizations and sectorial. And we have 2 institutional organizations, which are Université de Sainte-Anne and the Conseil scolaire acadien provincial. 35,000 people presently have French as their mother tongue, and 100,000 people speak French in Nova Scotia. The Acadian people contribute positively to the social fabric of Nova Scotia while preserving their culture, their language, and their heritage. And I thank you very much for your attention, and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Sorry about the delay, folks.
Okay.
We'll have a little break now, have a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for questions. Thank you so much. I love the way the development of the Acadian community really reflected your own development. So I hope we'll
Exactly.
get into that further. It was amazing to watch how quickly the community changed and grew. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that afterwards. So let's have a little snack now and come back in about 10 minutes. Preparing for this, and I saw that I was going to read the land acknowledgement. You know, I read about the Mi'kmaq and I read about the African Nova Scotians. And then I thought, oh, there's another group here. Like they were living here and we kicked them out of our land. So I'm wondering, Jules, whether or not this is an issue that Acadians are taking up now in the light of the land acknowledgements that we're doing now. And then I'll turn it over to you.
You know, it's a good question because even at our meetings, the Acadian public meetings that we have, we never, till last year, we never even acknowledged that the Acadians were here in 1604 and they were part of the Nova Scotian history at that time, and that all the history that they went through. And it was just at one of the meetings, says one of the guy was from PEI, he says, yeah, you're mentioning the Mi'kmaq and the First Nation people that have been here. We've taken their land and we acknowledge that we're on their territory, but we never mentioned the Acadians, because the Acadians, we had lands that were taken away from us. We came back, we couldn't get those lands, we had to settle elsewhere. And at the time, they made sure that we settled everywhere in Nova Scotia. So there wasn't a big regrouping of all Acadians, so we're all over Nova Scotia. And at that time, the organizers of the meeting said, yeah, that's true. And since then, well, they created a sort of an announcement saying that we acknowledge that we're also on the Acadian territory, that we're here in 1604, and that they're part of the Nova Scotian community since then. But it took a year, and it's not at all the meetings that we do mention it. So, Margie, you don't have to feel bad. So, any questions, any comments, any yes? Yes. Yes.
Currently fighting for its rights and survival, much in the same way that people did many, many years ago. And like when you grow up in Quebec, your education is very myopic and you learn about Quebec and not much about anywhere else. And we never heard that there were other Francophones, another group of Francophones in Canada. We only heard that there were French Canadians and that they were the only French people in all of North America. So, you know, obviously as I grew older, I learned that there was another group of Francophones in Canada, the Acadians. But I'm just wondering, what are relationships like between Acadians and French Canadians? Like, if there are relations.
Oh, there are, and they're quite good. And in fact, I just want to mention that, yeah, Champlain came to Nova Scotia in 2004, and then he went to Quebec 4 years later. So we were here before the Quebec was started in 6008. Okay, we were here in the 1604. We do have lots of relations with the Quebec. In fact, Nova Scotia just has an agreement, a friendly agreement between Nova Scotia and the Quebec government, where there are projects and exchanges that are done between the Acadian community and the Francophone community here in Nova Scotia with groups in Quebec. And we do have national meetings where that are held in Quebec, hosted by the Quebec government, inviting the Acadians and also the Francophones from elsewhere in Canada, because there are Francophones in every provinces and territories of Canada. And they do have organizations that promote the vitality of the Francophones in those areas, as well as schools and other services. Yes.
You refer to the difference between, I'm sorry. You refer to the difference between the Acadian and the other French Canadians, like Quebec's French Canadians. It must have started separation somewhere in France long before they came here, or no, or it was.
Yeah, the Acadians were mostly came mostly from the area of Belle-Île-en-Mer. There, well, where there, because there are Acadians community and organization in France in that part of Belle-Île-en-Mer and what's it called? La Normandie, yeah. Okay. And Quebec, most Quebecers come from other parts of France, but it depends. I mean, we come from all over. My ancestors come from La Rochelle. Okay. So, but the Acadian names, if you go to Grand Pré and look at the list, okay, those are mostly the Acadian families that were here at that time, and you find their names everywhere. They don't know it in Quebec, but there's over 3 million Acadians living in Quebec that are descendants from the Acadian population. Okay, and we're all over the world.
We have an online question.
Yes.
What's the definition of an Acadian? Is it a cultural difference from a Quebecois or a Francophone from Quebec?
Well, the simple answer is that we define an Acadian whose ancestors were here in Acadia, and were expelled or were part of the history that we know. We now know what's here in the Acadian Maritime. Okay, the Quebec, they went to Quebec and settled in Quebec, where we settled in the Maritimes. Now we're trying to have a definition where we're more inclusive, and we say everybody who feels an Acadian can be an Acadian. And we're quite open because we're very open with the Francophone immigrations and migrants from Quebec, migrants from elsewhere that are here in Halifax. In Halifax, you have all kinds of different nationalities that speak French. If you go to the school, the Sommet in Bedford, they've got 52 different flags representing 52 different nations, okay, that are students that are in school. But to come back to the definition at the time, we say a pure Acadian is one whose ancestors lived here and they were deported or were here at that time. Yes.
How different is the French spoken by les Acadiens from the French spoken in Quebec?
Well, the accent, the words, I mean, it's different. Okay, like the English language. You go to Newfoundland, it's in a different accent, different words, different expressions, or even in Cape Breton, people from Cape Breton. So, or here, or in Toronto. Okay. But the Acadian, even here in Nova Scotia, the accent is different from one region to another. If you go to Pubnico, Clare, Shittycamp, you got 3 different accents and expressions. In Pubnico, qui vient de Pubnico, okay, we don't say 75, c'est 75, okay, not 80, c'est 80. Octante 1, octante 2, okay? And I think they've got the right the pronunciation. It's octante is more than 80. You have to multiply 4 times 20. Yes.
It's like the definition of someone else, you're pointing over there.
Well, yeah, you've got 2. So go ahead and then I will go to yeah.
Yes, I said, I guess I'm the definition of a pure Acadian, Richard, Leblanc, Potier, et Clermont.
Yeah, so you've got, they're all Acadian were descendants. Wait,
But my question is, and I was at the Congrès Mondial, but
okay,
you mentioned something today that I've not heard, that I had not heard, and it's about the repainting of the signs.
yeah, they were done, they haven't done all the repainting across the province yet, but they did the one in Paramba, they did the one in Clare, the one in for Grand Pré, okay? And even in Clare and Paramba, they had this summer just underneath another sign saying the promotion of the Congrès Mondial Acadien. Yeah.
I'll be which board next week, so I'll have to look.
Yeah, look, it's brand new paint. Yes,
Curious about the folks who remained in the New Orleans area and not didn't come back to Canada. And I wonder whether there is any connections or relationships that the community has maintained with them.
yes, good question. We did, yeah. The Cajun, okay, which are Acadians that were deported in 1755 and ended up in Louisiana. And they are a big part of the Congrès Mondial Acadien, okay? They have, we have musicians, artists that come down, that participate. And even throughout the years, we have activities or concerts that we have Cajun that come down. And also there are Acadian musicians from here that go and participate into in their activities. So there's always, I receive their news letter every week. It's Warren Perrin sends this newsletter every week of the activities in Louisiana. So there is a continuous exchange, and even through the universities, Université de Lafayette, Université de Moncton, have an agreement that they do exchange programs. So yeah, there is a connection. Yeah. Okay. Well, got through. Yeah. Okay. You have it. Go ahead.
I come from Ville Madame.
Oui.
And what I wanted to ask you, because some people aren't aware, could you tell us about two of the organizations under the Fonds umbrella, maybe two of them that are more dynamic and.
Oh, they're all dynamic. But if you come from Petit Desgros, it's La Picasse. From Poulamont. Okay. On the north side. Okay, yeah. Well, in Petit, but I'll start off there. Okay, in the Isle Madame, you have La Picasse, which is a huge cultural center where you have the community radio, you have a museum, you have a big community hall, and a library plus community and cultural activities. Okay. In Shedican, it's la Société Saint-Pierre. If you go down there, les Trois Pignons. Okay, you can't miss it. It's original. It has a museum. It has what else? The community of radio, of course, is there, and it's also a tourist information center, and it's very, very active. Okay, and throughout the provinces here in Halifax, okay, it's le Conseil communautaire du Grand Havre. Conseil communautaire du Grand Havre is attached to the school in Dartmouth, Le Carrefour, and the school in Bedford, Le Sommet. And they organize Francophone activities almost every week. There's always something going on. If you go on their website, CCGH, all you have to put, you see their website. There's all kinds of activities. They're very, very active. Those are community, these are regional organizations. We have organizations for women, Fédération des Femmes Acadiennes de la Nouvelle-Écosse, who are very active as well in women's programs and guides that they built, that they just finished on. It's on their website. We have a youth organization, a senior organization, provincial organization, le RAN, Regroupement des aînés de la Nouvelle-Écosse. And there's also sectorial where you have, well, those would be sectorial provincial. You have for health, Réseau Santé de la Nouvelle-Écosse, that works to try to make sure that people that want to have services in French when they go to the hospital or need healthcare can get it in French. Okay, and we also have l'Association des juristes that works also in the law or judicial area. What's the? I'm searching for my words. Okay, sorry about that. Yes.
What's the significance of what you're wearing?
This is the Acadian flag, okay, which is with the star blue, okay? And this is for the Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse, the organization I'm working for, which has the same colors, okay, as the Acadian flag almost. And it's a star. You're welcome.
I was thinking, when you were talking about the different pronunciations and different ways of expressing themselves, the different French, be they Acadian or the Quebecois or whatever. In France, is there not some ruling body that says you cannot change a word or add a word to the French language without their permission?
I don't know, but I know that in France, there's a lot of English word part of their vocabulary, okay? Okay, they bring their car to the parking, they use English words, yeah, and then you go there and you use the French word and they say, no, they correct you and they use the English word. Le weekend, oui, there's an example, le weekend. Yes.
And the older I get, the more we realize what we were missing in our education, sadly. But the story of Chiasson, I had never heard. That just two people escaped to PEI. Is that what you said?
Well, two of my ancestors, or two of. She said she's never heard the history of Chiasson, okay, and relating to two of my ancestors were on George Island as prisoners. They escaped, they went to PEI, but then 14 of them came to Chiasson. And they're called the 14 elders. I don't know what some of them probably never made it more than 50 or 60 years old, but we still call them les 14 vieux, and they're the 14 founders of Chiasson. My two ancestors were helped by the Mi'kmaq to get to PEI, to go through the woods and find their orientation to an Acadian community. There was the Acadian community in PEI, which were not expelled in PEI at the time. Okay. Yes.
I have a couple of friends here who grew up with Acadian parents who didn't pass the language on, which is a shame, you know, and they feel it too, like they wish now they could speak French. And I'm wondering if that's changed now, if there's more tendency now for people to want to pass the language on.
Yeah, I think there is, but it's starting. Like there's a couple of communities where they lost their language, the French language completely. Chesapeake, okay, but you go there, they're very proud of their Acadian culture and heritage. And now they have a school, okay, which is too small. It started with 2 classes. There's 350 students, okay, and it's too small. So they're starting to regain the French language. Same thing with Torbay. Torbay is in the Guysborough County, okay. They've been asking for over 20 years to be recognized as an Acadian community. And last year, finally, they got 2 classes. And if we go there in 10 years' time, you'll see a school. with 300 students. Pumpket at the time, I remember when it first started, it was an elementary school, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. You go to Pumpket today, there's 350 students and the school is too small. So it's, they're trying, I mean, I would say that there's a revitality of the French language in the Acadian regions. Yeah.
Is the population growing or not? Of Acadians here.
Oh, yeah, of Acadian, okay. It's not really growing because all of the younger generation are going away. If you go to Chiasson, mostly elders, okay? In fact, yeah, I'm a bit ashamed of the school. In Chiasson, there's only 125 students. That's from primary to grade 12. In all others areas, it's 350 and more. But the younger generation is going away. We have to get back. We have to try to keep them there. Okay, there's an economic development coming up there, which could bring newcomers there. In fact, we have a project that has been accepted this year for a francophone immigration community. That Chiasson will be a francophone immigration community and getting immigrations to go to Chiasson, because there's an investor who wants to build a resort, hotel and restaurant, wants to build condos around the golf course, wants to build a marina with cottages, and if they don't get francophones to go there, Chiasson will be an Anglophone community in less than 10 or 20 years. So they're trying to, and he wants to build it there. He's an Anglophone from Toronto, a millionaire, okay? And he went there, he loved the community, the village, and he wants to invest, but he wants Chiasson to keep his language and Acadian identity. Mind you, it's going to change because more and more immigration, francophone immigration is coming in, and we need it. And the percentage of the francophone population of Nova Scotia is going down because the population of Nova Scotia is growing. And the Anglophone community is growing faster than the francophone community. We were 5% in 1971. We're only 3% in 2021, okay? And the population hasn't gone down. It's that the Anglophone population has grown. Any more questions? Yes.
On a lighter note,
Yes.
since it sounds like the questions are pretty much over, the age-old question for any Acadian. Now, you might not want to answer this being the executive director.
Oh, fine.
But do you prefer pate a la viande or happy pie?
I'll answer like a politician. I like both. But in Chiasson, we have le pâté à la viande, okay? And in the southwestern Nova Scotia, it's rappy pie. It's quite different. But I was raised at pâté à la viande. Any more questions? Pâté à la viande? That's meat pie. Okay, and in Chiasson, because I make them every Christmas time, we mix chicken and pork. Okay,
Some beef.
and some, yeah, but at home it was only chicken and pork. But some have, yeah, and you cook it for 2-3 hours to make sure that it's well cooked, well mixed, and it's melts in your. And then you make the dough, and you're in business.
I would believe that it would have been more game that was used.
What's that?
It would have been game meats that were used in it. Way back.
Rabbit, yeah.
Probably, yeah, probably rabbit, yeah, at the time, yeah.
Someone
Around a bit, yeah. But I mean, there were farms. I remember when I grew, we had a farm. There was a cow, chicken, and one pig. Okay, and every year before winter, we'd kill the pig, kill the cow, and of course some chicken. We'd have our meat for the winter, and every year we'd go around.
I was just in Clare this summer with some friends that were cottage, and we went to have rapi pie. I said, this is the only place you can get it. And I couldn't get it there either. They were sold out.
Yeah, and there's yeah, the Robichaud, yeah, exactly. So and there's sort of controversy on who makes the best rapi pie. Is it the Clare region or the Argyle region? So yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah, it is. More, yeah.
Like molasses.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your meat pie is very similar to tourtière, minus the spices.
Yeah. But tourtière, if you go to tourtière in Quebec, they had vegetables and yeah. Yeah, it's like minced meat. Yeah. No, you're right. We should have brought our recipe book.
I think since there's fewer people, I remember when the first English-speaking person came to Wedgwood. And then it was a slow in television and people had cars, we drive to Yarmouth.
Mhm.
So slowly, and then in leaps and bounds, it was anglicized to this day.
Mhm.
And it's the French spoken there now is very different it's very broken.
Yeah.
Prostate to say,
Yeah.
than when I went.
Yeah. Well, in Shericamp, it was the same. I mean, when I started, it was all French. And then after a while, the students from Pleasant Bay came down to the school of Shericamp. So there, the English language started to be spoken in the corridor or in the school area. Like I say, before they arrived, we spoke French all the time. I mean, even the English teachers were scolding us because they couldn't get us to speak English. It changed over times. Yeah. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you all for your broad range of questions. I think it shows, Jules, that you have opened up a new world for us. So thank you very, very much. And I loved all the conversation about the food too. Terrific. So please join me in thanking Jules for coming to speak to us today.
You're all welcome. I enjoyed it as much as you.
Good. Just a couple of things about scans. You know that the deadline for registration for this term is this coming Sunday, September the 29th. Classes, and you'll hear shortly after that, with everyone's fingers crossed, about which classes you've got into. So make sure that you've registered though by this Sunday, okay? And I think classes start October the 8th. So get your schedules ready. Okay. Thank you very much for coming today, and we'll see you soon.